Today, I want to talk about how to take notes in law school. I'm going to give a brief overview, and then I'm going to go through my 4 biggest tips for taking notes in law school. So I'm going to show you right here. As you can see in my torts notebook, I have all of my notes organized by topic, subtopic, and then the notes within each of those subtopics. I always organize my notes for each class in accordance with the syllabus. I like to fill out my notes with the skeleton of the semester because ultimately it makes it so much easier to outline because I already have all of my notes and all of my information for the class stored in the buckets that they will be in for the outline. All I have to really do is pare it down from here. I don't have to do much heavy work on the organization side of the outline. So within your notes for law school, you're going to have your reading notes, which will include case briefs, your class notes, and any notes from supplements that you might pick up throughout the semester. When thinking about taking notes in law school, it is really important to remember that the ultimate purpose of your notes is to help you on the exam and with your exam prep. Because of this, the way that you take notes throughout the semester should always be done thinking about how is this going to help me on the exam. So I personally recommend taking your reading notes, of course, before class, and then filling in your class notes within your reading notes on that topic. So if you took reading notes on negligence and then you have class notes on negligence, you would type them within that negligence section in your notes. I know some people who keep their reading notes separate from their class notes and store them in different areas. I personally don't think that makes sense because again, you're using your notes to study for the final. So it doesn't really make sense during your exam prep to have to go to multiple different places for your notes on one topic. I prefer to have them all in one place because it makes it super easy to outline. All right, so let's go over my 4 biggest tips for taking notes in law school. First, anytime your professor says anything about the exam, write it down. And when you do this, write in your notes something like exam tip, or on the exam, and then whatever the exam advice is from your professor. That way you can always go back in your notes and search for that phrase exam tip or whatever you choose to write. If you keep it consistent throughout your notes, it will take one simple search within your notebook for you to pull up every single exam tip from the whole semester in that class. I also recommend putting this text in a different color so the words exam tip catch your eye if you're just scrolling through your notes, kind of like I just showed you here. Number 2, write down any questions you have as soon as they come up and write them in line with the topic you have the question on. For example, if your professor is talking about negligence in class and you don't quite understand the difference between contributory negligence and comparative negligence, write that in line with your notes on that topic and say something like question for professor, and then your question, or ask professor, and then your question. Similar to the exam tip, if you do this throughout your notes, it will take one simple search of that phrase, ask professor, and you'll be able to pull up all of your notes within that topic or within that notebook for your professor. This becomes so helpful during office hours because if you don't write down your questions, what happens to a lot of students is they show up to office hours and they're sitting there like, I know I don't know everything, but I don't know what I need help with and I don't know what my questions are. And that becomes a super inefficient use of your time and the professor's time, honestly. You don't get much done in office hours sessions like that. And honestly, you'll just get so much more out of office hours if you have specific questions and you've written them out ahead of time. Number 3, type anything your professor says in your notes in a different color. This is my number 1 life-saving exam tip. This has completely saved my life a million times over. I personally choose purple font, as you can see here. I like this because the purple definitely stands out, but it's also pretty easy on the eyes and doesn't bother me if I'm scrolling through my notes. So using this method, you will have in black font your reading notes, your notes from any supplements, or from any other source that isn't from your professor's mouth directly. And then in the different colored text, you will have anything that your professor says on that topic in your note. Using this method is beneficial for a lot of reasons. First, if there's any conflicting information in your notes, you always know that the purple text wins out because that's what your professor had to say on the topic, and you'll have no issue trying to reconcile your notes when it's time to outline. And if you're wondering why does the purple text always win out, well, because at the end of the day, you will be taking an exam written by your professor and graded by your professor. So what really matters in this class is what your professor thinks on that topic. It matters far less what notes you have down from your classmates or even from a supplement that was written by a different professor who has different ideas on that doctrine. Also, this happened to me so many times during the exam where I have a question, whether it's multiple choice or short answer, or even issues in the essay prompt that are phrased in a way that I have the exact answer to it in my outline in purple. That is the perfect answer because it is exactly what the professor had to say on that topic. Number 4, and this one is huge. Do not compare yourself to others during class. Whether it's another student doing a cold call or offering a comment during class or students talking during the break, it is so easy to get distracted by what other students have to say. But you need to remember those students are in the exact same boat you are. They are not an expert on this topic. They just read the material for the first time this week, just like you. And sometimes the things that other students are saying that sounds so intimidating to you in the moment is actually wrong information. So do not get distracted during class by what other students have to say. Focus on the professor. Because again, at the end of the day, you will be taking an exam written by the professor and graded by the professor. Of course, if one of your classmates has said some great information and your professor seems to be responding positively to it in the front of the room, commenting on how it is a great point, or that is a really important factor in that case, then of course you can write that down in your note. But there's no need to transcribe every single word students say during class like you should be doing with the professor. Just be sure to not let yourself get confused by what other students have to say. I see this all the time where students go into class thinking they understand a subject, or maybe even not, but during class they're starting to understand what the professor is saying. Then other students offer up their take on that topic, and all of a sudden the student is so confused, or gets confused later reviewing their notes when they have conflicting information. This is another reason why you should always follow that tip of putting your professor's words in a different color. That way, if you do happen to get some of those confusing notes in there from something a classmate said, you can easily reconcile your notes when it's time to outline. Alright, those are my tips and tricks on how to take notes in law school. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or leave the questions in the comment section down below.